Okay, welcome everyone. I think we should get started. It is time. I'm János Farkas, co-chair of the working group, together with Lou Berger, and Ethan Grossman is our secretary. He is also on this call. You can find the material at the usual place. The link is shown on this slide, and all the working group information on the working group page. Next slide, please. So it is an IETF meeting. It is an interim meeting of the DETNET working group. Participation is governed by the IETF Note 12. If you are not familiar with it, please check. You see the link in the bottom of the page, and you can find it in multiple places. I would like to note that by participating, you acknowledge that you participate in a meeting that becomes part of the permanent record. Okay, let's go to the next slide, please. Just some administrative information. Lou has already typed it into the chat window. So we use the WebEx chat window for only for questions. So if you have questions to the presentation or you want to make a verbal comment, please add yourself to the queue at the microphone in the WebEx chat window with the +Q sign, or and then we will ask you to talk. And you can leave the queue if you decide so, with a -Q sign. For discussion chat, like generic chat, we use Jabber. So please join the Jabber chat. It's only Lou and myself so far on that. We use Etherpad for minute taking. As usual, you can see the link here on the screen, and this information is available at the meeting material. And we have the virtual blue sheet or the blue sheet actually at the end of the Etherpad. So please add yourself, fill in the name and both the name and the affiliation with full name and affiliation. Also, please join the minute taking in Etherpad. So that's what becomes the basis of our official minutes. The agenda and the slides are available at the page of this session, this interim session. And yes, I already mentioned the Jabber, you can find it. So please join us at Etherpad and in Jabber. Next slide, please. So our agenda for today, we have this introduction and status update, working group status update and status updates on our drafts. And after that, as we announced before, the main topic for today is the configuration Yang model, and the authors will give a presentation on it, give us a status update and dive into the technical details. Next slide, please. Just a reminder about working remote in this era. As always, and in general as well, the mailing list is the main forum for the work. So please do use the mailing list. The working group consensus is determined based on the mailing list. But actually, it may become more important these remote days. Working group decision and so on is driven by discussion on the mailing list to resolve open issues, comment documents, and so on. So please participate in the mailing list. We have virtual meetings. That's the way for now. And this is the second virtual interim this year. We can schedule interims as needed for the progress. Like this one is kind of dedicated for Yang. We also will have a meeting at the upcoming IETF 109. And it's also very important that we can have working meetings a bit more informal, like not minutes and so on. And if so, you may have noticed that we are having those type of meetings. For example, for the progressing the Yang, most recently we have weekly electronic meetings, and the working group WebEx is available for that. So please just let us know if you would see benefit and you would think it useful to schedule this type of informal working meetings for a topic. Please not hesitate to contact us. It seems it will stay this virtual world for now, and we think that this type of virtual meetings may facilitate making progress. So I suggest to leverage this opportunity. Next slide, please. Just a reminder about the IPR disclosure process. We follow the process of IETF, and we do call for IPR at adoption and working group last call and IETF last call. So it's important to disclose IPR if you are aware of to working group material. Next slide, please. Okay, the status update about our drafts. So we have already 3 RFCs published, and we have a couple of drafts with the IESG. The base data plane drafts, the 5 data plane drafts are progressing well. The first 2, the data plane framework and the IP draft are with the IETF editor in the RFC editor queue, and the MPLS one and the IP over MPLS has recently passed IESG approval, so it's getting towards the RFC editor queue. We are done with them, and also the MPLS over UDP-IP, we have submitted the publication request, and actually there is a quite recent version uploaded available that addresses all the comments we have received so far. So as I understand, it's to be scheduled for a telechat and for getting towards IESG approval. The security draft has a similar status. It has been updated, and all the comments we have received have been addressed, and it's to be scheduled for a telechat for IESG approval. And the flow information model is also in similar status. It is an update is being prepared, actually half ready, addressing all the comments we got to be able to move on towards the IESG approval. Next slide, please. And this is the rest of our working group drafts. We have the TSN related data plane drafts that have that are post the working group last call. Just got comments on them from Lou on the list, and the next step is to address the comments and prepare new revisions. As I mentioned before, the main topic for today is the Yang draft. We will hear that more in detail. And we have 3 more working group drafts that are not on the agenda for today. We have the 2 OEM drafts. The IPOM draft has been recently adopted by the working group. And we also have the bounded latency draft. These are being updated. We got some information from the authors and new revisions, for example, from the bounded latency is being prepared to be submitted for IETF 109. Next slide, please. This brings to IETF 109, which will be our next meeting. So we have requested a session for the DETNET working group at IETF 109. Please update your drafts. As I mentioned, some updates are ongoing. That's really, really great. Thank you for that. And if you would like to give a presentation at the session in the DETNET working group, please email us, the chairs at the DETNET-chairs@IETF.org. We will send announcement on formal slot requests after the session is scheduled. I mean, we know when we are during the meeting week. The time zone for the meeting week will be the Bangkok time zone, as we were supposed to meet in Bangkok, but we don't know exactly what time and day DETNET will be meeting, but there will be a DETNET meeting. That was the introductory part. Any questions? Further thoughts? Okay.
Only just that, please go to the blue sheet. I just put the link in the list and check that I've put in your name properly. And if you could add your affiliation, that would be great.
Yes. Please do so. So the next one is the Yang. So please take it over.
Yeah, I'm not sure who's presenting. Also, whoever is presenting, please feel free to take the screen if you'd like, or I can present, or I can turn for you. Either way.
Hi, it's Don here. I'll start out, just introduce myself, and I'll let the other editors speak first, and then I think I'm going to drive most of the presentation, but if the other editors want to speak up, that's fine by me too. So I'm Don Fedek with LabN.net. I've been working on this for the last year, I guess. Mainly the purpose of that I came in was to try and align the flow model document, and so we've done that. And the last, I'll give an update of what we've been doing, but I'll let the other authors introduce themselves, and then we can go on to the material.
Hi, this is Xuesong. Thank you, Janos. Thank you, Dan, for your introduction. And the Yang model has been worked among the authors for about 1 year, and we have discussion together every week. And it is great to see that there is great progress in this work. And I think we this time we will update a lot of new things during the I think the past 2 or 3 months. What we have done, mainly about aggregation and some other update. I think Dan will give more details. And thank you for other authors to participate in this work, especially Yuan Chao and Dan. Their work has give a lot of more ideas to the DETNET Yang model. And also thank you, Richard, to join our discussion.
Okay. I think that's a good introduction of the authors. So if anybody else wants to speak up, they could just use the queue, but we'll start moving on. So if you could move to the next slide, Lou. So the status is we merged the models. So when we started out, I came in with a slightly different model that I based purely on the flow, the flow model, and we spent several meetings merging that together. We've gone through terminology, but it might not all be there yet. We've still got a little bit of terminology to clean up. But generally, as we merged, we tried to make sure it made sense. We've gone back to the data plane drafts a few times to make sure that we're matching the data plane drafts. And we do need to include the reference pointers to the various data plane drafts. So we've been working with the model, we've been working with the drafts, but we haven't included the reference pointers in there. So as we go forward, that's one piece that we have to do. Next slide, please. So a little bit of the history of the things here. I'm just going to concentrate on the last two versions. So we merged the models and terminology alignment, and then we've been adding aggregation and the instance models. By the instance models, we've been using YangLint to validate the models, because what I've personally found that brings clarity to the model for me, because when you use the instance data on the model, you only see the configuration for the particular scenario that you're looking at. So it's a little bit easier to see, you know, the tree for the forest that's in the Yang tree. So we've got a fairly large tree, and when you do the instance model, you can focus in on what you're doing. So I think that's brought a lot of alignment. The other things that we've done in the last ones is we've made sure that everything is going cleaner. So YangLint is another hurdle to make the model cleaner, and also the IDNets, as we put everything into the draft, the draft is getting cleaner, and it should start picking up. I don't know if I didn't check to see if it actually picked up the model from the draft, but we had some issues before that the model wasn't being picked up. So hopefully that's all cleaned up. Next chart. So this is just a recap diagram. We've seen this before. This is a relationship to the Yang model and the various drafts that are out there. So on the left side, we've got the various data formats that can come into applications, whether it be IP, MPLS, or Ethernet data. And then we've got the various components, I'd say, of the path: the application, the service sublayer, and the forwarding sublayer that are all detailed in the various drafts there. And we're not doing everything yet. We're trying to stick to the drafts that are out there. So, but we're building an infrastructure that hopefully this could be added to. And the MPLS case in the middle is one of the ones that we focused on a lot, because that's a simpler model to IP coming in, and MPLS is one of the simpler ones that we've been doing. Okay, next chart. This is just a recap model. We've gone through this before, so it's just showing things that have come from the flow DETNET flow document and flow information model. And so the application and the service sublayer and the various characteristics that are in there, the various attributes. So we use these attributes and we work these into the model. We can move on. So one of the things that we had in the model that came from the flow information model was this traffic requirements and traffic specification, and we had that sprinkled at various places throughout the model, because you could have that information either at the application, the service sublayer, or even the forwarding sublayer. And what we did in this one as we were working through aggregation was we pulled that out as a profile and just referred to it in the model. So now it can be, it's still optional at several layers. It typically would be specified at the service sublayer, but it can be specified at all layers. And you would basically have a profile that you could use and define it. And then you could actually have one or more services or applications sharing the profile. So if it's a one-to-one service relationship, you could share the same profile, or you could have another one. So we thought that was an improvement on the model. Next chart, please. So this is still an area of discussion. When we added aggregation, the goal was not to change the one-to-one mapping too much, because we had a working model, and it was how do we add this in. I had pulled this one out for a service aggregation group as a separate piece in the tree, and but I didn't want to replicate everything that was at the service sublayer. So it's a service sublayer aggregation model. In particular, this one is showing how the aggregation label for MPLS could be used and how it relates back to the services. But there's in the model today, there's actually two versions of this. There's one that Young Chul had provided that's in the service sublayer, and this one is out of the service sublayer. So if and I provided two instance data to try to illustrate the differences in those. I don't know whether there's a big difference, because I think they both got all the same elements. It's really a matter of seeing if anybody can pick up any technical reason that we should go one way or the other. We'll have to choose one, though. Next chart, please. So this is a bit of a terminology type diagram of the pieces of the tree. So we've taken a represented piece of the tree. You can go and look at the full model, but we've tried to show how the various pieces fit together. So with aggregation, and the color coding is showing what we've added in for some of the aggregation pieces. Now there's this also illustrates the overlap that's there. So we have the service type, if it's grouped or non-grouped. If it's non-grouped, it's the old model, the one-to-one model. If it was grouped, then it would have an aggregation group reference to the previous chart we saw. And then the other one is down below, without the grouping model. We've got an aggregated service in the service sublayer and the aggregated forwarding piece. The one piece that we do have with these two models, if you compare a aggregated model to a model that is not aggregated, you have to align the forwarding sublayer for all the pieces that are in the aggregation piece. And so there are multiple places to do that in the current model. We were trying to reduce that and make it as easy for the user to specify this, but you still have the issue with the upper model. There is no pointer to the forwarding sublayer. So the aggregation group reference relies on the service sublayer forwarding pointers to be aligned for everything in the group. And it's similar for the other model too. You have to ensure that your forwarding is aligned or not specified at the various level, so it picks it up from the aggregation piece. So that's the one area we still have to work on. And then we've got, as we'll go through the charts, we'll also see that there may be some types of aggregation we've added that we don't need. We'd like, because at a certain point, it's easier just to start another DETNET service and aggregate things in. So we want to make sure that we're not overly complicating the model by adding aggregation types in we don't need. Go to the next slide, please. So this is the forwarding sublayer piece, and again, we've identified the pieces in here. Now, this is one where I think we have perhaps a bit of capability we don't need. We were still discussing this as we were going through the cases, but we have an aggregation at the forwarding layer that maybe is not needed, because the forwarding sublayer can naturally aggregate services, because you can use that forwarding reference multiple times. So I don't think we need as much aggregation capability at the forwarding layer here for extra labels that we did at the service sublayer. Go on to the next chart, please.
I was trying to find 50 plus Q, but since I would just recognize myself, I'll just ask the clarifying question. When you say that it's not needed, it's not that the function isn't supported, it's that you don't need any additional elements in the tree.
Right.
So
at a forwarding sublayer, you can, at least in the endpoint, you can have multiple services that aggregate into a forwarding sublayer. That's always been supported in the model, because you can just do that because you're putting another label on with the forwarding layer. With the service sublayer, you needed the aggregation label to be added in there. But there are a number of cases that we'll go through, and it's possible that I've missed some case where this functionality is also needed at the forwarding layer at another place in the diagram. I'm not 100% sure that I've ruled out everything, so that's what we have to go through. And does that help?
I think I heard you answer yes. So yeah, thank you.
Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to go through some cases here at an ingress net. So case one is multiple app flows are aggregated into a service sublayer. Next chart. So just for some reference here, Youngchell has done a whole bunch of diagrams that help clarify this as we've been going along, and we've been using this. So this is just a single DETNET flow showing the encapsulation as it goes through a network. This happens to be one that's using replication and elimination. So you can see the various, it's an IP packet that comes in, it gets its MPLS labels, the service label and the forwarding sublayer label, and the pieces, the labels may change as they go along the path, and the relative data plane functions along the various nodes. So this is just a reference diagram. We're going to use this sort of picture and terminology through all of the cases that we follow up on. Go to the next one. So this is the case A1 where we're aggregating app flows into a service sublayer, and there's in the various documents, there's kind of two ways we can do this. So one way is we have two applications, and we just basically aggregate we aggregate them basically into a single service sublayer, and again, just as we had before, it's managed the data plane just as it was with the normal flow. So we've got aggregation in here. It's being aggregated sort of transparently to the rest of the data plane inside the DETNET flows. Next chart. So this is the running through Yanglint, the instance data, the JSON output of this. So this just shows we're using the data-t data FJSON is basically saying take this data and apply it as the operational schema of the model that we've got. So we've had to fill in some information about the interfaces. So we just use a set of interfaces, and then on the right-hand side, we've got the application flow. We've got the name and some attributes about that application. And so we've got the two applications. Go on to the next one. These files, they tend to be fairly long, but they have all components that are kind of together. So we've set up some traffic profiles here. We just filled in some data. They're just representative traffic profiles of, you know, information that you would put in there, and it shows the member applications if they're using the same profile. We've got app 1 and app 0 using the same traffic profile. And then on the right side there, we've got the start of a service sublayer for this. So we've got the name of the service sublayer, if it's got protection, and then the various, we've got the app flows, as you can see the aggregation going in, and then we've got the MPLS labels that are on that service sublayer. Next chart. Oh, did you go too far? Yeah. And then we've got the forwarding sublayer. So this is just showing the outer label that would go on there. And so that's a typical configuration for that case of that first case of aggregation. Okay. Next chart. So case B is aggregation of multiple DETNET flows at an ingress node. So case B1 is multiple service sublayers of a DETNET flow are aggregated into a forwarding sublayer. And case B2 is multiple service sublayers are aggregated into a service sublayer using the aggregated DETNET flow. Okay. So next chart. So I believe for this one, we've just got the picture that shows this. We do have some data for the next one with the aggregation label, because that was one of the pieces that was new we were putting in. So in this one, we're just showing that we've got two sources here, and we're showing the data plane representation. And because it's being done at the aggregated at the forwarding label, let's go on one more chart and see if I think this is the, go on next chart. B1, yeah, this is the one I was looking. So this is case B1, where the service is coming in, but it's being aggregated at the forwarding label. So we have multiple service sublayers using a single forwarding label. That was supported from the model for a long time. So we could have this multiplexing of service sublayers into a forwarding label. And this just shows, again, the representative case of what the data plane would look like for that. Okay, next chart. So B2 is the one where we've been doing work about how to put the aggregation label in, and this is the one where I think the model has, at this point, two ways to do this, and we're trying to resolve that as we go through. So in this case, we need to apply at the service layer the aggregation label. which is shown here as the A label. And when you compare with the previous chart, the only difference is that we have this A label now, and we're using that in the service sublayer as another form of aggregation that's supported and called out in the MPLS draft. And so we've been augmenting the model to support that. So go on. So as I've mentioned, there's currently two ways to achieve the aggregation labels. The first one does it all in the service sublayer branch and creates a service aggregation label. The second one has an aggregation label for grouping the service sublayers. We've just got to clean up the model and decide which way to do it. So I've illustrated in the next few charts the instance data for both of them so you can see the differences. So I'll walk through that piece. Next chart. So this is the instance data, and this is very similar to what we've seen before. So there's just the interfaces and the application. Next chart. And then we have the traffic profile, and then we have the service sublayer. So in here, in the service sublayer, we have the aggregation service sublayer located inside the service sublayer below there. Next slide. The same thing goes for the next service. So we have the next SSL2, and it again has a outgoing aggregation service sublayer, the ASL1. And then we have the ASL1 definition and its various functions, showing the services in there, and then the outgoing list for its forwarding label and the forwarding sublayer. Next chart. And then we have the forwarding sublayer that goes along with that. Okay, next chart. So this one is the one where it's just organized a little differently, we're just resolving this. We were just getting to the point in the discussions where we were seeing this. So this one has, again, interfaces and then the applications. The only reason the applications have a few more attributes in here than the previous model, but there's no real difference at this layer. Next chart. Traffic profile, same as before. Service aggregation group is pulled out by it separately. So this one we have it out separately, and we have the aggregation label and the services that it's referring to. Next chart. Then we have the services. So in this one, the services are basically the same, but they have a grouped function. They say that they're grouped, and then they're basically the same as they were in the individual case. Trying to keep that as consistent as possible with the one before. So we have two services. One on the left is SSL1 and SSL3 on the right. Next chart. And then we had the forwarding sublayer. So we're just trying to resolve which way is better, and it may be just that it's 6 of one, half a dozen of another. I don't know if there's really any preference right now. We haven't discussed in the group which way to go yet, but if anybody has any input on that, we'd appreciate any guidance on it. Next chart. Was that somebody trying to say something?
I was just going to ask, how do you want to run this discussion? Do do you want discussion topic, the discussion at the end? Do you want to go take questions in the middle?
Well,
I mean, it sounds like this is an opportunity for some working group feedback. And
yes,
I mean,
yes.
are you, do you want to discuss it now, or do you want people to hold their questions?
Yeah, so this would be a good opportunity for people to make comments on this, to say whether they're opinionated, or just choose one, or something like that. And any feedback on, our plan is to incorporate some of this instance data into the document. I think it helps. The drafts that I've worked on in the IETF have some of this instance data in, and I think it adds clarity to the overall model. But any feedback on that too? So yeah, I open up the mic for some people to talk about this piece. Whether it's clear or not. I know it's a little bit of a rush because people just are seeing this maybe for the first time, but it would be a good opportunity to discuss it.
So maybe just show the differences again, just flip back and forth. And,
Sure. So if you just want to go backwards, really it's just that stop right here. The service aggregation group is pulled out of the service sublayer, and it's referring to it. And if you go down one, forward one, yeah, each service is referring to that group, and then we'll go up to the previous model. So keep going up. Whoop. No, okay, so down one. So in this one we have the service sublayer, and it's referring to the aggregation layer. So very similar to the last piece. Keep going. The other service, and it's referring to the service to the layer, but the aggregation is within the service sublayer. So it's within the same sort of tree structure. It's down below it, and it's essentially the same, I think. One is just inside the service tree, and the other one is outside. Not a big difference, in my opinion, the more I look at it.
I see Balazs has a question.
Yeah, not a question, maybe a comment. Is that I think if you look to the architecture document for DETNET, there we have defined the service sublayer and the forwarding sublayer. So aggregation is something functional. Aggregation is a functionality for the service sublayer. So having that component inside the service sublayer seems to be more natural for me. Than defining a different aggregation sublayer, which is not really there in the data plane documents and in the architecture documents.
Okay.
So I just added myself to the queue. I think we support aggregation at both layers. I mean, look at MPLS. Hierarchical MPLS is aggregation at the forwarding layer. So I think allowing for both of them makes a lot of sense. Don, you asked a couple of, I think, general questions. So I'm going to give you my views on them. I think examples are really good. So, example instance data, I think is hugely helpful. I've often seen it as an appendix, though, just to make it clear that it's non-normative.
Right.
But that's a style point. I think having the data is hugely helpful to implementation. So if you're going through the trouble of generating examples, I think put them into the document and making sure they're right is really helpful. The other thing is, as much as you can do to reduce where the number of elements that you have to, the number of nodes that have to change in order to, when configuration change, that's always a good design principle.
Right.
So, if there's one model has requires more to make a change or to instantiate a service versus the other, from my standpoint, less is more. On that same theme, it seems to me that you could model aggregation as just a in the outgoing list rather than introducing a whole new service element. For example, in MPLS, where you need an extra label, that could just be modeled as a new app flow. So you could have one service whose output is another service, and thereby get an S label and then the A label. One of the nice things there is for implementations that support it, you could do pre-auth at either one of those levels based on, again, what the hardware supports. I don't expect nested, but who knows? Maybe someone will build a really fancy piece of hardware that does it.
Right.
So, did you guys think about just doing it without adding an extra aggregation component and just by basically chaining services or chaining forwarding sublayers? And it seems to work on the output case. I haven't thought through the input case, which may be more complex.
So when you look at the individual model with its the service and the forwarding sublayer, and then you try to do aggregation within that, you then have some change. I think the second model, the one that we're looking at here, is trying to address that because it has the forwarding sublayer all in line. So I think it goes towards that model. The other model was I authored that, and I was trying to keep the service as much, whether it was aggregated or not aggregated, the same, to see if it kept it any cleaner. Looking at it this way, I think this one is probably as good, and it keeps the three levels in it. I didn't want to create another layer. The other point is that when you're configuring this way, you don't have to specify it completely down to how can I put this? There's some things that once you've got the pointer to the aggregation group and stuff like that, you don't have to fill in all the other details. So if we can simplify the configuration that way, by saying, well, you don't have an outgoing list, and this one may do that. I'm looking at it. I think it does achieve that. So I think that this is the way to go with it. Inside the service sublayer, and we have this aggregation label. I think your other question was, could we do this without even putting an aggregation, just having the label specified? Because we do have a label stack, and we could just say there's the service sublayer labels, and then there's the aggregation label as part of the label stack inside of there. The reason we didn't do that is that it was a lot harder to keep the consistency between the pieces if we didn't specify an aggregation piece.
Yeah, I actually wasn't suggesting just burying it in the label stack. What I was suggesting is that you set the outgoing, instead of to a forwarding sublayer, you put the outgoing to another service. Another service, and that service is just an aggregation service, and you can put the A label there.
Yeah. I think I'd have to think about that. Well, we can. I don't think I can think on the fly that fast.
All right, we can take it to the list.
Yeah.
And maybe I'll join this next Monday meeting, and we can discuss it there. All right, thank you.
We'll look at that. All right. So go down a few charts.
Yeah, I don't see any other questions, so I think we'll move on.
Okay, so this one we just want to do a sanity check to see if that we've got the cases or we can eliminate any of these cases. So aggregation of multiple DETNET flows at a relay node. Now, this is one piece where we've sort of had a little bit of a discussion. My view has been that we have a relay function versus a relay node. So in a DETNET node, you may have some parts of the data plane that are behaving as a relay, some parts that are behaving as a transit node, some parts that are behaving as an endpoint, and you have those functions. However, a lot of the terminology here talks about a relay node, what you do at a relay node. I always read that as a relay function, but I don't know if there's guidance from the work group of which way we should do this. I don't view it as a monolithic node, but perhaps I'm wrong on that. Is there any comment on that?
I'm not sure what distinction you're making. I mean, a node certainly can, any node can do multiple functions. It can terminate traffic. It can also relay traffic. Are you asking, is it okay for a node to do both?
No,
I'm just asking.
I'm asking whether the term relay node seems to be implying that it is a monolithic node. I haven't been that precise on it, but I realized that we were talking about it that way, and I would prefer a relay function, you know, because it's behaving for this particular DETNET flow as a relay function in that node, as opposed to a relay node. But I'm willing to go with whatever the terminology is that the groups decides.
Shusong is in queue.
Yes, one comment about this question. I think I prefer to remain the relay node rather than relay function, because I think inside the relay node there could be a lot of functions. For example, we can terminate a tunnel and also do the replication. So I think maybe relay node is more precise to indicate this case.
Okay. All right. If everybody's fine with it,
Does it have impact on the model at all?
No. No.
If it's terminology, we should just be consistent with the earlier documents. Whatever the earlier documents say, we should.
Right. Yeah. So, anyways, so these are the cases that were proposed for this. So we have multiple forwarding sublayers are aggregated into a forwarding sublayer. Multiple service sublayers of DETNET flows are aggregated into a forwarding sublayer. Multiple service sublayers of DETNET flows are aggregated into a service sublayer with a new aggregated DETNET flow. And multiple forwarding sublayers of DETNET flows are aggregated into a service sublayer. I'm trying to figure out what's the difference between 3 and 4 right now. Oh, multiple forwarding sublayers and network flows are aggregated into a service sublayer of a new aggregated DETNET flow. Yeah, okay. So the question is, do we need all these functions? Like one option for C4 is that we just start a new DETNET service and then we say, well, it's a new service all over again. Do we need case C4? or the other flip side of that is the model sufficiently flexible that it just comes out and that's supported anyways. So I don't think we've quite gone through each one of these cases yet and determined that, but that's what we're looking at. Go to the next chart. How are we doing on time anyways?
35 minutes.
Okay. So this is again just the individual DETNET flow. So we've seen this chart before, just terminology. Go on. So this is now showing, okay. So this is showing, it's a slide build up. So we've got two individual DETNET flows. Next chart. So now we've got these two DETNET flows in case C1, and it's showing the pieces that are coming together. So this is just aggregation at the forwarding sublayer. And like we've said before, this is relatively simple to do in the model we've had. Go on. So this one is now aggregating service sublayers into a, this is node 1 aggregating and 2 into a forwarding sublayer. Yeah, I'm trying to find out the difference between C1 and C2. So we have, okay, go back to C2. We have stacked F labels in C. Go back to C1. In C1 we have stacked F labels, and in C2 we have a single forwarding label. So the question is, do we need this? Because we're the other way to do this is to aggregate at the service sublayer. Maybe Young Chul has a point he wants to make on this.
I mean, these just seem like two use cases, right? I mean, you're trying to support both of these, right?
Well, the question is, do we need to support all of them? Are we going overboard on the thing? I
mean, the data plane document supports this, right? So
yeah.
you're trying to support the data plane document.
Yeah.
So if you're just illustrating cases, Yang-Xiao, is that what you were doing here? Just illustrating different use cases?
This case is just possible case based on data plane document.
Okay.
So in other words, this is just based on the data plane. Okay.
Balaji speaking, just maybe one comment. So that is the case where you are involving the F labels in identifying the flows. I think this is why you wanted to create the use case for that. Or am I wrong here? Because we have discussed about whether the nodes have a per node label space or a per interface label space. And in case of per interface label space, we said that the F labels can be involved to identify the DETNET flows.
Okay,
This can also just be classic HLSPs,
right.
where
Yes.
the lowest label is just an HLSP.
Okay, so C3 is the one that we've already gone through. Service sublayer with the aggregated layer. I'm not sure why this. Oh, this is because it's at a relay node. So this is the difference that I was trying to get at with the relay node. So we did it before. The difference between the B case was that it was at the ingress node doing the A label, and now this is doing this at the relay node. And so case 4, this is now aggregating the F labels. So in the stack we have S labels, F labels, an A label, and then an F label.
I'm not sure this case is in the data plane document.
Yeah.
I mean, I have to think about it, because you're doing service aggregation underneath a flow. Yeah, I guess that could happen. I don't know. That's sort of a interesting one. So MPLS is the service. I think that's covered, actually. Balaj?
Yeah, I also think that that is covered, especially if you are involving the F labels to identify the flows, then you need the F label above the A label in order to being able to identify the flow.
Okay, thanks.
All right. So this is case D. This is aggregation of multiple DETNET flows at a transit node. So this is again just the build-up chart showing the flows that go through. So we've got flow 1. You can go on the next chart, and then flow 2, and then the next chart. So this is a transit node aggregating forwarding sublayers into a forwarding sublayer. So at the transit node, we're putting a single F label on that's aggregating multiple DETNET flows. I think this was the one that I questioned again. If we did, what's the difference between this and just saying that we have another DETNET service in the middle of the network, and everything's transparent to that DETNET service as far as that outer label goes? At what point do we say, you know, it's a separate service and we just start over again?
Well, from a scaling standpoint, HLSPs allow, the HLSP can be done sort of at the node, or it actually can be done in between the nodes.
Right.
So, I think you want to model both those cases.
Right.
Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, well, I'm asking, how deep do we go in the label stack before we stop? Is this sufficient? Like, is this the correct level, or are we going too far? That was just the question.
We've been, in general, we model hierarchy as, it's only one layer of hierarchy, and you can do nested hierarchy, but each layer of the hierarchy only understands sort of where you are and the one below, or, who's coming in and where you are. So +1 and -1, it never goes beyond that.
Yeah, yeah. I think
so.
That's
I mean,
true.
that's what we've always done in MPLS and GMPLS.
Yeah. No, I think that's true here too. Yeah. I'm not suggesting that we're looking at all the labels. So our other piece to do then is to make sure that we can actually build instance data for this out of the current model. So Youngchul has done this, and we just have to review it. So we've got the instance data, and all these cases, he's got instance data that accompanies this. All right, so that's basically all the configuration options that we've got. So any feedback on these models would be appreciated or considered. We're just going to go through and do terminology consistency. We got some questions answered today that's helpful. There aren't any unnecessary cases, so we have to add references to the model and then include in the appendix some Yanglint sample configuration. So that's the plan. So we should be getting to the end of this, I would hope, in the next iteration. I would think that we'd be pretty close to getting going for last call. Any other comments?
Is the plan to continue meeting on Mondays?
We didn't say no. Yes, I think that's been the implicit thing with the group of us. We're making progress.
And that's the link that's been posted to the list if anyone else wants to join, right?
Right.
Okay. Maybe we'll drop the link into the minutes so others can join if they want, or into the Etherpad.
Yeah. So I think that's all we had for this.
So are there any other comments or questions? Okay, thank you. Obviously we're going to be meeting online for a while. I think everyone saw the announcement for Prague this morning or today. So we'll continue these both informal and formal meetings, and look to at least the next couple of IETFs online. Janos, anything final to add?
No, nothing further thoughts, but yes, I somehow we should keep the momentum online until we cannot meet in person again.
Yeah, and thank you all for contributing to this work and keeping the momentum going. Really appreciate it.
Yes, indeed, indeed. Thank you very much for pushing this forward.
Okay, and with that, I think we're going to close the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you.